Hello, everybody. We want to welcome you to today's Wednesday webinar, and our topic today is Lightspeed Rental Module. And excited to share this with you as we find out often from our existing customers and prospects, they may not even know that we have this functionality. So it's a great area for us to really dig into and provide you with just some more information. And of course, we know many of you have been here before, but just a friendly reminder, anytime throughout the webinar, if you've got questions, please just put them into the Zoom Q&A. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen where you can just type in a question anytime throughout the webinar. We're going to answer those as they come in, or we'll allow time even at the end of the webinar to address those questions. Today's webinar will also be recorded, and we'll follow it up with a Q&A document for any of the questions we don't get to. And of course, if you've joined us before, you're very familiar with our presenter. We know him, we love him, he's been here before. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. And thanks for joining us today, folks. For those of you that know me, I'm Brian Tierney, the Customer Development Manager here at Lightspeed. For those that don't, well, welcome and thanks for joining us for the Wednesday webinar. And just to tell you a little bit about me, been with Lightspeed for 13 years now in various departments and capacities, and I worked in a dealership here in Utah prior to my time with the Lightspeed organization. Started using Lightspeed back in 1995 behind a parts, a service, and a sales desk at a dealership selling motorcycles here in Salt Lake City, Utah. So been using Lightspeed for just about 30 years. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being a part of this. So what got us together today? We're here to talk about rental. And why rental? Why rental in Lightspeed? Well, some of you may not even be aware that there is a rental module in Lightspeed, and some may be just looking at it and be aware that it's there. But really, the purpose for this meeting is to let you know that it does exist and talk about why you might employ it in your Lightspeed experience and in your business. And really, why would you? Well, rental gives you the ability to create recurring revenue in your business for property that you already own, whether it's golf cars, boats, motorcycles, ATVs, or if it's storage facilities like a warehouse or a parking lot or a campground or a dock maybe on a marina that you're using in your business. Those are all ways that you can generate revenue in your business, and that's why rental. So what we're going to cover today with regard to Lightspeed and rental is how do we see what our fleet and reservations look like? How do I know what locations, whether it's campgrounds or docking or storage facilities, or if it's vehicles, which campers, trailers, motorcycles, ATVs, which vehicles are available? We're going to see that in some of the views. We're going to talk about rental items, what those are, charges and fees that coincide with the rental experience. We'll go through some reservation details and talk about the mobile application and some of the features and functions therein. We'll talk about some accounting, billing, bookkeeping, and then we'll take some questions at the end of the presentation. So what kinds of rentals exist in Lightspeed? Well, just about anything. And we've got some dealerships and businesses that are very creative in what they're using for rental revenue sources. The bulk of what we traditionally see are anything from boats to RVs, maybe power equipment, chainsaws, lawnmowers, those kinds of things. Vehicles like RVs, ATVs, motorcycles, we're seeing a lot of those, and also locations, whether it's storage locations, you're storing RVs, boats, motorcycles, or anything on site at your business, or maybe you've got some campgrounds or other off-site locations where you can share those into your rental experience. And we'll talk about all of those as we go through rental together. But where we're going to start when it comes to rental in Lightspeed is the views. And in my mind, this is probably the neatest element of our rental module. And you can see on the slide that we're showing here, we'll even see this visual inside the Lightspeed screen. You can put a picture of your rental fleet, your motorcycles, your ATVs, your boats. You can lay that image right inside of Lightspeed. You can also do overview map, Google Maps, or satellite views of your campgrounds and locations and lay that image right inside of Lightspeed. I think that's pretty cool. We're going to look at that together. And also some graphical, more traditional, almost spreadsheet-ish views of what's going on in the rental business. So without further ado, let's go ahead and pull Lightspeed up on the screen here. And you've probably seen this image before. Those of you that have used Lightspeed, if we've got some folks that are on the call today that have never seen Lightspeed before, what you're seeing is the login screen or the splash screen within the program. At the very top of the screen, we're going to forego all of the other formalities about Lightspeed and dive right into rental. You'll notice it has its own selection, its own place in the navigation within the program. If I select rental at the top of the screen, below the word rental is a series of selections, maybe touch points, settings, and analytics that relate to that rental module. And we'll go through some of those things together. But what I'm going to start with is my favorite part of the rental module, the graphic view. When I load that graphic view, back to the idea that I can lay an image of my rental fleet right inside of Lightspeed. Here's an example of that. Maybe I rent golf cars, and so I took a picture of my golf cars and I put that picture right inside of Lightspeed. And why would I do that? Well, first of all, if I'm a rental clerk and I'm managing the rental business, and I want to be able to provide context, details to my customer about what vehicles are available, seeing the image is kind of nice. I can actually look at the image, see which cars live in my fleet, and you'll notice at the bottom of the screen on the right side is a legend, a color-coded legend. And you can kind of see in the image, hopefully you can see this, those rectangles that are laying right across the golf cars in this image. Those are telling me a little bit of information. Now, the legend on the bottom right has some descriptions: unassigned, reserved, occupied, and partial. And that's giving me a little bit of an indication of the status of those vehicles as it relates to the open or pending reservations. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But as I'm looking at this image, or let's switch the screen to a different image. Maybe I'm looking for power equipment that I've got available to rent, riding lawnmowers, chainsaws, equipment that I might be using outdoors. Maybe I'm looking at those in my rental fleet. Or maybe I'm looking at motorcycles. So I'm going to change my view to show the motorcycles that we've got to rent. And it brings up an image of the motorcycle fleet that I've got. Well, let's talk about locations. So in the graphic view, I can also go down to a campground view. And this kind of goes back to the idea of like a Google Images overhead view of a campground, a marina, a storage facility. And that image is then laying into Lightspeed, and those graphical legend views show up on the image. And it actually allows me as a rental clerk to interact with that image, and I'll show you how. So as I'm interacting with my customer and they say, you know what, I really like that campground that's on the north side of your facility. I'll take that one. Well, I can see based on the gray rectangle that that particular location on my campground's available. It tells me that because it's unassigned based on the legend. If I want to start the reservation process, I can say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, let's grab that one for you. We double click that location and Lightspeed starts to create the reservation. We'll come back to the reservation experience in just a moment. But back to the idea that the graphic image just basically allows me to then portray what I've got available to my customers, and I can actually flip the screen around and show it to them so that they feel like they're involved in the discussion. Pick the unit, start the reservation from this screen. Now, if we look at another view, I'm going to go to rental and I'm going to go to availability views. Now, availability view is a little more of a traditional, almost like an Excel spreadsheet view. When I open up this image, over on the right side of the screen, I've got my groups, types, and the actual units that I've got available. And I'm going to compress some of the detail just so things are a little bit clearer to see. I've got a lot of things happening in my rental business here. So I'm going to look specifically at rental units like golf cars. I'm going to look at storage like dry storage. And as soon as I open up the groups, which are the high-level ways that I organize what I've got available from units to locations, and then I go to types, which are maybe fifth wheels versus campers in terms of rental units. And then I go to the actual units themselves, which I would equate those to, say, a stock number if we're comparing it to major unit inventory. As I'm looking at the columns on the left, the detail in the middle of the screen conveys time frames like weeks, days, months, or even hours based on whatever criteria I apply to my rental business. Maybe I rent by the day, maybe I rent by the hour, or maybe we do long-term reservations by the week, by the month, or even seasonal or annual. So we can do all of those things using availability. Now, as I'm looking at this screen, and we're going to focus on golf cars, I can see that I right now, based on Sunday, this past Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and so on, I'm looking at individual days of this week. I can see that I've got 3 golf cars available for each of those days. So it's telling me I've got 3. Well, I've actually got more than 3 golf cars in my fleet. It just so happens that most of them are occupied. And that red bar is telling me that those cars are occupied. I can't rent them out because somebody's already got them. But the boxes that aren't red, those are the units that are available. And if I double click, let's say today's Wednesday, I'm going to double click on golf car 001. I can start that reservation process here. So as I've double clicked, it puts some detail at the bottom of the screen where I can enter my start date and start time. When am I going to start the clock on this reservation? And then click create reservation and move forward from there. Long story short, with those views, it gives you the information, the details that you need as a rental clerk in a rental business to see what products are available, whether you like the spreadsheet view or the graphical view of your vehicles and your inventory in the rental business. So let's scoot on to the next topic. We're going to talk about rental items. And what is a rental item? Well, in my mind, the rental item is the reason the customers are coming to see you in the first place. They want to rent a motorcycle. They want to rent an RV. They want to rent a boat, or they want to be able to store something they already own somewhere on your property. And that's the reason they're coming to see you. We call those rental items. So we'll talk about what rental items look like in Lightspeed now. So let's go back into the Lightspeed screen. And I'm going to close some of the tabs we have open. We're going to go back to rental, and I'm going to select rental items. Now, in rental items, back to the idea that I could have anything from vehicles, ATVs, motorcycles, RVs, boats, to campgrounds, to tents, for that matter. I could have a shelf in a warehouse that I'm renting out. I could have a parking slip, could have a docking slip, could have anything that lives in rental items. It's very flexible in that regard. But basically, at a high level, as I'm looking at my rental items list, I see the item number, which I would say is akin to a stock number if we're talking comparing sales to rental. Description gives me a little bit of a high level. Is it a boat? Is it an RV? Is it a tent? Group is kind of those high level depictors. Is this a rental unit? Is it a storage facility? And then the type, is it a golf car versus a boat? And then we've got some rates. We'll talk about rates in a moment. But if I'm hunting and pecking around to look at my rental fleet, I can certainly do that, much like you would in your parts inventory or your sales inventory. But if I'm looking for something specific, just like any other search function in the system, as soon as I enter search criteria at the top of the screen, Lightspeed's really good about eliminating anything that doesn't match what I'm searching for. And it pulls up only the things that I care to see. And in this case, we're now looking at a detail screen for the rental item, which in this case is a Coachman RV. I can see the rental item number, again, closely related to stock number. Description, it's a Coachman 235 model. It's a motorhome type, and we generally rent this based on weekend rates. So it kind of ties into my default rates, and I might have different rates or different durations tied to different vehicles. Let's say a motorcycle is rented by the day or by the hour versus an RV that goes out by the day or by the week or by the month. Storage facilities might be week, monthly, seasonal, those kinds of things. Attributes which give me descriptions. Well, this RV has a microwave and a stove and a refrigerator and all the things that somebody would need if they're using an RV. It also has got some dimensions. It's got some meter readings. So as that unit's been sent out on reservation and it's come back, we're recording the mileage. Or if it's a unit that doesn't have an odometer, or maybe we're tracking the hours that's attached to that unit, we're recording it on the unit so that we can keep tabs on that. And we'll see why in just a second. We can also see any outstanding or prior reservation details. Who are the customers that have rented it? What was the duration? What did the reservations look like? And any kind of maintenance notes, any repair orders that have been attached to that unit, notes that we need to know, condition of the vehicle as it's come in and out of service are all recorded on the unit record. But one of the most important aspects of vehicles in this case, this wouldn't really apply to locations because we can't have locations in sales inventory, but we can have vehicles. And over on the right side of the screen, I've got a unit info tab that's tying a stock numbered major unit to my rental item. And what does that mean? Well, if this Coachman, this RV that I'm using as revenue in my rental business actually lives as part of my sales inventory, I can attach the stock numbered unit from my sales inventory to the rental item. In fact, I can then update the status on that stock numbered unit to a rental status. And what that does is it takes it out of my available inventory. It still shows up on inventory reports. It still shows up on my flooring reports for AP, but it's no longer available to sell. Now I can see it on reports as a salesperson. If I'm in the sales department, I can still see that that unit exists, and I can actually even quote pricing on it if I'm potentially going to sell it. But I can't sell it until that unit has been removed from rental status, and to remove it, I just simply uncheck the box and save. So it's very easy to do that. Now that also assumes that the unit's not occupied by a reservation currently either. But back to the idea that we can attach our major unit inventory to rental fleets temporarily, and going back to what's the reason for the rental business? Well, recurring revenue on products you already own. It's kind of a win-win situation, really. And eventually going back to meter readings or going back to maintenance intervals, or maybe just the clock is ticked to the point where it's now time to take this rental item, relieve it from your rental fleet, and put it back into available units as a used unit to sell. Well, I just uncheck the box, click save. It now gets removed from my rental fleet and somebody can sell it. And all that recurring revenue that we developed over the prior 6 months or year, we get to keep all that. Plus we get to sell the unit and make money on the sale. Win-win in my mind. Pretty cool. So let's kind of scoot over from rental units, and we're going to talk about another aspect of the rental business, which is charges and fees. And whenever it comes to charges and fees, I think of these sometimes as creature comforts that coincide to the rental experience. It also relates to things like boxes of chips and pop and ice that might coincide with renting a boat or an RV, might be helmet or safety gear that coincides with renting motorcycles or ATVs. It could be electrical charges or storage charges or fuel or repair charges that coincide with the rental experience. But these are all the necessary charges and fees that coincide with that reservation experience. So let's talk about those and see what it looks like in Lightspeed. So I'm going to go to rental. And I'm going to come down to lists where kind of my default settings live. And it just so happens that charges live here as well. And at a very high level, what we see on the left side of the screen are descriptions. Is it life vests we're talking about? Is it ice? Is it hookup fees? Is it a helmet? So those could be charges. Now in the center of the screen is my sales category, which is accounting for the sale or accounting for the inventory, the revenue, the cost of goods. Over on just to the right of that is my charge type. And there's really two charge types when it comes to rental charges, repeating or non-repeating. And why would I have either or? Well, when it comes to, let's say, a helmet, for example, when a customer rents an ATV from me and also needs a helmet, I'm going to charge them one time for the use of that helmet. And if they're keeping it out for multiple hours or maybe multiple days, and I'm recurring charges on that reservation, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment, I'm not going to charge the customer over and over and over again for that helmet. I'm going to charge them one time. But if there's a cleaning fee that's a monthly recurring charge, or if there's electrical, or if there's kind of any kind of sewage charges that I need to charge monthly or as a repeating factor in the reservation experience, I might set that up as a repeating charge. And you'll see how that coincides with the rental experience as we move into reservations next. So let's go ahead and talk about what the reservation itself looks like. What is the customer experience? What does the rental clerk see when they're managing that customer interaction, that rental item in a document that exists in the rental module? So let's go ahead and pull that back up on the screen here, and we'll talk about what that looks like. So I'm going to go to rental, and I'm going to go into reservations. And as I open up this screen, I'm just going to put some search criteria in there to start searching for a reservation. And at a very high level, when I open up this screen, there's two checkboxes that are defaulted, the word future and the word active, which those words probably wouldn't show up anywhere else in Lightspeed. So they're unique to the rental experience. And when it comes to those two definitions, future refers to reservations that me as a rental clerk, maybe I selected a unit from my graphical view. I put a customer's name on it, but that reservation is not going to start till Saturday. So I've started proactively building the reservation and getting things prepared for my customer. But until that customer takes delivery of that rental unit, it sits in the future. Hasn't happened yet. Now, the active ones are the ones where things are happening. Customers taking delivery, the item's now sitting on the storage facility, the campground's now occupied. That reservation is in effect, it's active. Now, the other details I can see on the screen here, reservation number, state, customer name, the vehicle or location that's being rented, along with start and end dates, and follow-up dates on this screen. But for now, we're going to pick on Jeremy McGrath. We're going to go inside of his reservation and kind of walk around the room a little bit and get familiar with what a reservation looks like in Lightspeed. And those of you that have seen reservations before, or if you've seen a sales deal before, or if you've seen a repair order before, there's some familiar features and functions that live here. And we'll talk about this, and we're also going to look at the mobile application here in just a moment. Customer information is on the upper left, just like you would see on a parts invoice, sales deal, repair order. We always have a customer in the upper left. And if I'm adding a brand new customer to a reservation, if I'm starting from the reservation screen, I can search by first name, I can search by last name, and I can find the customer that I'm looking for and drop that customer into the reservation. So much like any other Lightspeed document. In the center of the screen is the rental item. Now, we talked about at the beginning of our discussion today, going into those availability views and graphical views, selecting a unit from the picture or from the spreadsheet, double-clicking and starting the reservation. And if you do it that way, that unit that you select automatically populates the reservation and you move forward from there. Now, if I've started by going into the reservation list and I start and click new, at that point I can click select and it brings up a view of that available view that we saw together a moment ago. It's that same spreadsheet view that we shared just a moment ago, just scaled down so it's now fitting in the reservation screen. I can kind of hunt around and peck for the unit that I'm looking for, select it, drop it into the reservation. And in this case, we can see we've got a motorhome and we can see the item number along with the active status. Bottom left of the screen is where the financial calculations start to occur. I've got a start date and an end date. Now, there are times when I may not have an end date, and these coincide a lot of times with your long-term storage and dockage, for example, where I might have a start date, but we're not sure when we're going to close that reservation out, in which case I can check the box for no end date, and we can bill in recurring intervals. We'll take a look at some of that billing in just a moment. But if I do have a start and end date, it's going to populate a period, which is a function of start and end. In this case, it's a little over 5 days for my customer. The rate, which is a reflection of the type or the unit itself, automatically defaults into the reservation. So whatever we rent that unit out by the day, by the hour, by the period, that rate populates my reservation. And then the bottom of the field, the total value, is a calculation of period times rate, gives me total. Now, in either of those cases, I can override any of those. Now, one thing that I'll also make mention about is, as folks that have used Lightspeed know, there's permissions attached to everything. Every informational field in the program has some permission that either allows you to do something or doesn't allow you to do something. And some of those does it allow me to do some things are being able to manipulate period, rate, or total. In essence, offer a discount or an incentive to the customer based on circumstances in the reservation. Bottom of the screen shows me some build to date, future date, and reservation total values, so financial totals in the reservation. Top of the screen has two buttons we want to be familiar with, the start and the stop button. Now, a couple different things could happen as soon as I start a reservation. When I hit the start button, oftentimes a cashier window pops up and allows me to do one of two things. It allows me to either collect a security deposit, which might be one of my default settings in the system, that whenever I start a reservation, a security deposit gets collected. And that could be a variable based on the unit type. So it could be we collect $100 up front, could be we collect $1,000 up front. It's just based on the particular unit. So as soon as I hit that reservation, my cashier window comes up, allows me to then collect that security deposit. Now, it's possible that not only do I collect the security deposit, but I might also collect a portion or all of the total rental. And it really kind of depends on your business and what you see as the best practice for you. And it might even be indicative of the unit that's being rented. So nonetheless, when I hit start, my cashier window pops up. I'm going to collect the amount that's due at that point and cashier the invoice. Now, any invoice that gets cashiered at the start or at any point during the reservation process gets captured on the invoice history tab, where a record of all of the payments and invoices are collected. And I can reprint those and preview those if I need to. Back to the general page. I also can see the ability to take a payment. So if I want to collect a deposit that's above and beyond the start and stop date, I can do that as well. And we now have a function called pay over time, which is a direct connection to an instant finance function through a company called Sunbit, where if a customer needs to pay for a portion or all of, or maybe repairs related to a reservation, you can use Sunbit to get an instant approval and have that customer finance any incurred damages. And we'll talk about what damages might look like in just a second. So what might damages look like? Well, as we know, when customers take out vehicles, sometimes things go wrong. Things get broken potentially. Things happen. It's just the way it goes. On the rental charges tab inside the reservation, this is where we're going to be able to accrue or account for things like damage, for example, or back to those charges like those boxes of chips, the bags of ice, the helmets, the safety gear. All of those things can be applied to the rental charges side of the rental by clicking Add Charge, selecting the item from that charge list and dropping it into the reservation, and it then becomes a function of that reservation experience and adding to the overall value. Sometimes we have a customer that destroys a unit. That might be a charge that we apply to that unit, a 3,000 destroyed unit charge. So we can account for those things. And if the customer doesn't have 3,000 in his pocket, sadly, unfortunately, that's still his responsibility or her responsibility. Sunbit might be a good option for handling that for the customer. Now, I'm going to pull up the mobile application and just talk about the mobile experience when it comes to managing reservations. So we kind of went through a high-level, quick introduction to the reservation experience. But for those of you that have seen this image before, you know this is the Lightspeed mobile application. For those that haven't, you're seeing the Lightspeed mobile app, which works in the Apple or Android environment. It works in tablets and cell phones, and it gives you access to a number of features and functions within the program. We're going to talk specifically about reservations, and we're going to key in on some of the reporting tools as well. But if I'm opening up the mobile application and I hit that reservations button, I see all of the open reservations that exist in Lightspeed. It's the same list that we saw on the desktop a moment ago. I can select a reservation from the list and see what item is being rented. When was the last time we communicated to the customer? I can also launch my camera inside the mobile application and take pictures, the before and after pictures, if I want to make sure that I'm documenting pre-existing scratches and dings on the unit so that I don't charge the customer for those. And then when that vehicle returns, I want to get some pictures of what it looked like when it came back so that we can account for that destroyed unit in the reservation. And as I take pictures with the mobile application, those pictures land as attachments inside the reservation. And I might even use this to get a picture of the customer's driver's license, which is a good idea to do when it comes to the reservation experience. And back to the mobile application. I can also send a copy of any of the forms. Now, on the desktop version of Lightspeed, if we're managing the rental experience on the desktop, I can generate a rental statement, which I can provide to the customer, which gives them an overview of the entire rental experience from the unit to the rates to the total charges, etc. On the unit record, I can print this. I can even produce an e-signature copy of this for the customer, or any of the other forms in the rental experience. And other forms might be rental agreements, might be a walk around of the vehicle to check the condition, or an in and out sheet for the rental experience. All of those are accessible and visible on the mobile application as well, where I can select a form, send it to the customer's cell phone via text or email, or even just pull it up on my own device, accept terms and conditions of e-signature if I need to get a signature from the customer on the walk around or the rental disclosure statements. Customer reviews the document, clicks the sign button, signs with their finger, and then they can download a copy right to their phone. If you're delivering or doing the walk around of the vehicle and you're not at the Lightspeed desk, it still gives you the ability to manage that reservation from your cell phone, which is pretty cool. Now, the other thing you can do with the mobile application is you can access follow-ups and appointments and even communication with your rental reservation customers. Text and email can be captured on the mobile application, and as you text and email to update the customer on the status of the reservation, all that communication is captured in the reservation experience as well, creating a seamless experience for your business to maintain the he said, she said when it comes to the reservation, and also create a seamless experience for your customer so that they're properly taken care of. Let's take a look at a couple of functions related to billing and housekeeping, the billing and the bookkeeping functions when it comes to reservations. And then we'll kind of rotate back to the mobile application in its little piece when it comes to that as well. So when it comes to rental billing and housekeeping and bookkeeping, pardon me for the housekeeping, a number of different things can be done in the rental module, such as checking the age of reservations. You can manage credit cards on file. You can manage a connection to accounts receivable. You can even update monthly or seasonal billing within the reservation experience to make sure that your reservations are populating the proper values, your customers and your business are properly taken care of. And let's take a look at some of those. So I'm going to go back to the rental experience, and I'm going to select, or just kind of show at a high level, credit card batch payments. So for your longer term reservations, if you've got customers that are renting for storage or for long-term reservations, you might have put their credit card on file, in which case, say once a week or once a month, you charge portions of that reservation to their credit card through batch payments. Certainly a function that's available, assuming you're using our integrated WorldPay credit card function. We also have a connection to AR batch payments. In other words, if you've got those long-term reservations, you can pull up a list of all the customers with the long-term reservations, and you can charge any values on those open reservations to an accounts receivable account where the AR department in your business handles billing and bookkeeping for rental. Now, rental itself has its own billing functionality. If we go into rental billing, again, for those longer term reservations, you can calculate charges, and it'll bring up a list of all of the open reservations that currently exist in Lightspeed. And as those reservations populate the screen, you can then apply charges for long-term reservations, any additional damage or charges that have been incurred, and apply those to the rental experience. So it gives you that capacity and ability as well. Now, when it comes to managing aging, you want to see what reservations are out there, who's currently occupying a location, who's currently utilizing a unit, what are the charges that have been incurred when it comes to those reservations. I can run an aging report, which is going to give me a list of all the customers that are currently occupying a rental location or storage facility or vehicles, and see all of the different incidentals that are applied to that, the balance of the reservation, and the age of the balance. I can also send rental statements out of the rental module, which if I've got those longer term storage reservations, I can produce a statement that then can be sent by email or by postal to the customer so that they can get alerted about what they owe us. And essentially the statement might look something like this, with your business logo, customer information, a full breakdown on what's attached to that reservation, including charges and amount due. Now, again, you can send this via email or print and send by post, but the benefit here is you can get paid in an appropriate amount of time for your rental business. Now, all of that said, when it comes to managing the reservation, the fleets that live in your rental environment, or any charges therein, rental ends up having its own profit center in your business. Rental is its own department in the business, and thus on your financial reports, transaction report, daily operating control report, profit and loss statement, rental shows up as its own profit center. And this is an example of what that looks like. We're looking at one of the transaction reports in management activity. You can see rental sits as its own profit center, its own department, where we can see debits and credits, revenues, deposits collected, taxes, and deferred revenue as a function of the rental business. Now, that being said, you can also see that information on things like your daily operating control report or your financial statements, where if we're looking at the department breakdown, for example, we can see new units, used units, service department, parts and accessories, finance, and my storage and rental revenues, and see if we're on track for what we've decided was our target for the year for revenue. How do we compare to last year's revenue value? Are we trending in the right direction? And we can see all of that as its own standalone profit center. Same is true on the data portion of the report, which is kind of a simplified version of your profit and loss statement, if you will, where we can see total dealership, kind of your consolidated statement, but ultimately, as we mentioned, storage and rental shows up there as well. Part of the reason I'm showing you this is there is a connection to the mobile app. So going back to the mobile experience, if I pull up my mobile application and pull up Doc Report, I can see that same visual. I can see that same report detail. Whether I'm looking at parts, service, sales, or rental, I can see if I'm on target for the revenues that we've set in place. So lots of great detail, lots of ways to manage the business, lots of ways to generate recurring revenue in the rental experience. And really, just to kind of review, we talked about the views that exist in Lightspeed, managing the fleets, the locations, the storage facilities. We talked about what rental items are and how we can connect that to your major unit inventory. We went through a little bit of a reservation experience. We talked about the mobile application and even e-signature and some billing and housekeeping. But I like this quote: "Success is never owned. It is rented, and the rent is due every day." So thanks for joining us today, folks. We hope we were able to give you some information about our rental experience. And at this point, take any questions you might have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. Great stuff with the rental. I mean, and we see just the power of Lightspeed and all the different ways that our clients and customers have used rental to really kind of grow their business and, to your point, generate some additional revenue. Just a couple of questions that came in. One that was kind of more specific about integration with website. So people are wondering if they're running rentals kind of as part of a website. How does Lightspeed, can it work with that?
Great question. We are in the process of what our development team calls an epic project to build out some integrations, some hooks, some API integration with web pages. Right now, we don't have an effective feed that's communicating from web platforms to rental, but it's imminent. It's coming very soon. So we're excited about that, but at the moment, no, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, great question too. And that actually was one of the other questions that just came in. So they're kind of looking for more information on that. One other one was just a question more about kind of the financials. Is there a way to determine what your rental income is for existing reservations before the end of the month closeout date?
It is. So we would generally refer to that as deferred revenue, and deferred revenue will show up as its own GL location on profit and loss statements. It shows up as part of your chart of accounts and can be reported on within the rental module. So absolutely.
Yep, good questions. And here's another one too. can you cancel a rental that has been opened and closed, but no payment has been taken or it's not finalized?
You can. Yep, you can cancel. In fact, I would recommend you do, because that's going to relieve a reservation item, a rental item from that rental. So as long as you've got a rental item on an open reservation, it's occupying that space or that unit. So I would encourage you to make sure you're maintaining those.
Yeah, that's a great one too. And this is probably one that sometimes it's varied with our modules, but people are wondering what the cost is for the rental module. And I know lots of times it's dependent on number of users and license and so forth. So we may have to defer that to their individual sales rep.
Yeah, I would definitely incur or take that question to your sales rep, because it is variable depending on the business. Absolutely. But
And
great
there
question.
is a fee for the rental module though, as I mean, kind of our biggest thing we want to get across. So
Yeah, there is a cost to it, just like for the parts module, the service or sales module. Absolutely.
yep. Gosh, we've got great questions coming in here too. For a yearly reservation, how do you determine the monthly income from the deferred revenue?
Great question. It's generally a function of, again, rate times the time frame. And as you're billing for that reservation, if it's you're billing monthly, you're billing weekly, you're billing seasonally, that billing is impacting your deferred revenue accounts, and it can be reported on from a profit and loss or from a granular reporting basis. But if you have specific accounting questions, we can certainly follow up with a follow-up email.
Yeah, and this is kind of part of that too. It's like looking at rate stuff again. Can you edit the rates if the annual costs increases? So it's almost like you have a contract, and how does that manage that?
You can. So your default settings would live in the system, and you can always change those, because we know that times change and rates change with the times. So you can always update the system to reflect changes in your rental experience. But on a case-by-case basis, reservation by reservation basis, or even if you have, and this is something we didn't talk about, if you have a reservation that has multiple units on it, so you're not limited to one unit per reservation, you could have 10, 20, multiple units on a single reservation and manage them individually, and then affect the individual rate per item on a reservation.
No, that makes tons of sense. So, well, I think that's the majority of the questions that have come in here. And again, if we didn't get to yours or whatever, we're going to be happy to follow up with those. I'd also encourage you that next week on Wednesday at 11 Central, we have the rental module technical webinar, and we'll dig into a lot of the questions that came in today and some of the common questions that the tech support team gets on our rental module. So it's an opportunity for you to kind of even dig a little deeper, or kind of just understand maybe where we see different issues, how people kind of work with the rental module to ensure that it's tracking what they want to, and making sure that they're looking at the financials correctly as well. Anything else, Brian, on your end? I think that's our questions.
Well, I think that'll take us to the conclusion today, but I certainly appreciate everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Diana, for organizing this meeting, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. Enjoy your Wednesday.